Hola, mi amigo. We are back.
Oh.
Episode 14 of the Dargan Podcast. We're not alone. We've got the big, bad, notorious Wolfie. Wolfie, welcome to the pod, bro.
Lock and load.
This is your first feature, mate. How do you feel?
Nervous.
Yeah. Mate, I thought you would have been a seasoned veteran by now, no?
Yeah, but I think it's like whenever you're like, oh, I want to do well this one.
Of course.
I don't give a fuck on me.
You be yourself, bro, and you'll smash, mate.
That's good enough.
So Wolfie and I current setup at the moment, we're sitting in the gaff in Tulum. We've been here about 4 or 5 days now, and we've been travelling for 2-3 weeks. Did you ever think that you'd be away traveling with me when we first met?
No, probably not for as long. That's the good thing about life, though. You know, it's sort of it's unexpected. Like, it's nice because when you look back on it, you just wouldn't assume. You probably wouldn't put me and you as like, if you had have said we bump into each other, you wouldn't have been like, oh, them two will really get along. Especially if you looked at like our content from the outside and stuff.
Yeah.
But it blends quite well. I like, because obviously we're both hyper as fuck.
Yeah, because you come across as this crass, vulgar, out there, and I come across very polished. You would say no?
Yeah, I would say so to an extent. You are loose enough, but like I would say, yeah, like I'm very rough and ready. But you're just on social media. You just come across a bit more,
a bit more polished, more
a bit more clean cut, a bit more like you actually put thought. Like I speak and then go, oh well, I hope that sounds right. Whereas you can tell you've had to think about what you've said.
No, it's you with the sriracha sauce, like one of the story. You've got half of your dinner on your face. I love it because you don't care.
You know, that's me.
We were talking about what dog we would both be. So what dog do you think, before we answer, what dog do you think Wolfie's going to be, right? Get it in your head, right? If we had to both be a breed of dog, what do you...
I answered both these, so...
Right, go.
People will assume it'd be like I'd give myself a big husky or something. No, I'd be a French bulldog, because they're like, sorry if you have a French bulldog, but a French bulldog exactly isn't like the best looking dog, but it's full of crack, it's full of stacks, and it's wee bit muscly, but it's not too much. It's got personality, it's a little bit mad in the eyes. So versus people always give themselves what they want, and Daniel would 100% be a black lab. He can say what he wants. Joe, like a Labrador is like, it just suits perfectly. But yeah.
And how have you found traveling so far? I honestly, not really haven't done much traveling, again, aside from holidays here and there when I was younger, which again, really grateful for. Never actually going away for long stints. I done Thailand with my brother when I was 18, and that was more of a party holiday. Like I came back with a drink. I came back and I was in algae, like. But we've been away in Bali for a month. We've been here for a couple of weeks now. That's taught me so much, seeing how other people on the other side of the world, they've so little, but they're so happy. I always come back to Ireland with gratitude. I always come back to Ireland feeling really grateful for, the little things in there.
Yeah, even small conversations I wouldn't have with a lot of people. Like, for example, we were out for dinner last night at like a taco van, and we were sitting around. It's like literally like a children's play set, and there's like 6 seats around it, so you sit with randomers. And there was me and Daniel, 3 French women and 2 older British women. But the 3 French women were talking about the fact that they had to go back to Paris to go back to work. And they were almost like, how can you just travel so much? And then you realize, like, fuck, you can't take everything for granted. And then it's even like the case of, like, I really enjoy traveling because I also really enjoy home when I do go home. So, like, if I'm away for like a month with you and then I'm away for a month again, and then I go home, I'm almost like, I look forward to not just mum, dad, sister. I look forward to the food. I look forward to everything. So for me, it's that case of like, you don't realize what you have until, so it's nice to constantly get that reaffirming of like, you don't realize what you had until it's gone. It's like even sleeping in your own bed, like after that week away, you come back and it's fucking like, it's definitely. But traveling's been good for me. It's good because we work in the same flow. But as you said, it's more so a case of what it opens your eyes to, and you get. It makes you have to be more outgoing to make friends. You have to be more confident. It builds character as well, because like you do get caught in situations like yesterday where there's blackout and you have no electricity, and you're sort of like, fuck, you have nobody to talk to, you have no signal, you have no Wi-Fi, you have no net, and you're like, fuck, and I'm by myself. You're sort of like, well, what the fuck do we do, Joe? So yeah, like I just enjoy it because it spices things up. And for me, I don't know about you, but I find that if I spend too long in one place, days roll into weeks, weeks roll into months, and months roll into years very fast. And whereas the more I move about, which I know everybody doesn't have this luxury, the more it feels like I've lived different lives.
Yeah, but I think there's always something to have. Yeah, as you said, there's different lives, but having something to look forward to. And I think everybody could take that into a lesson. If we always have a trip, even if that's a weekend away for 2 days down in the country planned, you're always going to have something to look forward to. And when I have something to look forward to, you know, I'm so much happier day to day. Again, it's people talk about dopamine, and you know, when you order something online, and you know, the best bit about it, the best buzz about it is when you're actually waiting to get it, and when it comes, you don't get that hit. And I was actually listening to a podcast, and it was this neuroscientist, he was on talking about dopamine and the pleasure you get when you order something online, and he says it's very similar to when you have a holiday booked. And he says, if you want to be excited day to day, if you want to be excited for your life, always have something planned, always have something booked. And you're testament to that, man. You're Mr. 305, 365. But you seem to be very grateful no matter where you go. Like, you seem to be always pretty content. You know, I hear a lot of people chatting shit about LA, chatting shit about London, chatting shit about even back home in Ireland. Why do you think that you're at the complete other school of thought? Like, you always seem to be pretty happy no matter where you go.
It's because I always ask myself, like, I think one of the main things that people do is, like, whenever they're taking risks or gambles, and they go, this sounds a bit off tangent, but like, when people are taking risks or gambles, I always go, what's the worst case scenario? And they go, my worst case scenario is I live at home with my mum and dad. And I'm like, oh, I already do that at time period. So I'm like, I'm in worst case scenario. So then it makes me grateful that I'll get away. And then I think when you have the right perception of a trip, it's like, when you go on holidays and you have this expectation that everything's going to be unbelievable, whereas I always go with extremely low expectations of everywhere, and anything is good for me. So if the food's good, I'm happy. If it's not raining, I'm happy. It's a case of, but like, it's just for me being like grateful for the small things. So even at home, if it's raining, I'm grateful that like I have a cup of coffee, I have good food. I'm just very much always working on that thought process. And if I ever get that negative mind frame, I always do the case of, I used to write out like 5 to 10 things why it's positive. So like, if for example it's raining at home and I've like all my moods off, I'd be like, Joe, well, I get to spend time with family, I don't have to drive to work, it means I get to make a really nice dinner. Joe, some things that sound really basic, but then the more you do that, and the more you ingrain that thought process of every time there's a negative, you look for, I don't like the word positive, but you look for the light in it, then you eventually find that as soon as there's a negative, you automatically start doing that. That's what Mo Gallatin says, if you ever listen to him. Like, he's a happiness expert. He says, like, just rewiring the brain. That's neuroplasticity, rewiring, because you're rewiring your thought process. That's how habits are formed. It's the same in your thought process, and it becomes subconscious. So then now, whenever, and a really good example is, I remember I got a brand new truck, Raptor, dream car, and I've told you this loads, and I reversed it on my drive, and I heard a slap, and like, I heard a slap, and I was like, oh my god, and I looked, and a wheelie bin hit, and I think most people's reaction would have been, holy fuck, I just drove my brand new truck worth 50,000 sterling into a fucking bin and marked it. My first thought was, thank fuck that wasn't a kid. Thank fuck that is, and excuse my French, but I think
it's where I don't care.
I always think it's one of these things where I just think, how can the situation be worse? And then I immediately get grateful. It's like
the life hack.
Oh, absolutely. It's like, for example, like if you go and the queue's so long for something, I'm like, well, this could be worse. The queue could be longer. The food could be shit. It's good if there's a queue. And then I immediately start looping around, because there always is that worst case scenario. For me, it's like, when I think of that, and I always think like, how could things be worse? Then I'm like immediately like feeling 10 times better. It's like a really good example. It's like my MacBook broke when I were last year in Spain for the event. Like the week before, I was doing a speaking gig, it broke. And the first thing I remember saying, like, my ones were ringing me being like, you're not panicking. I was like, no. I was like, it'd be worse if I couldn't afford another one. I was like, Joe, that's that. I was like, there's nothing else I can do. I was like, but it'd be a lot worse if I actually couldn't afford one. I was like, I can afford one. So I was like, that's my problem solved.
Yeah, that completely changed my life. I was a very negative individual beforehand, and you know, I actually got it from Tony Robbins. It's, what are you truly grateful for? And instead of just saying what you're grateful for, like, actually, close your eyes and put yourself in that situation. And you know, if you knew me back in the day, you will know that I thought that was in the balls. You know, but when you're when you're in a place where you feel negative and, you know, life's not playing out the way you want it to, like, you'll do everything to feel better. And that's one thing I threw myself into, is like actually asking myself and putting myself into it every single day. And like I was always grateful for my granny, and like really pictured in my head her coming to the back door, "Hello, Daniel," in her wee accent. Granny, big shout out. She may be listening to the pod, probably not, but anyway. So yeah, you do a lot of traveling. People be asking, who's the Wolfie's wife? Is he on lockdown? Are you single? Is there a woman behind the scenes? Because I know a lot of people on social media that they maybe have boyfriends, girlfriends, and, you know, they just don't post. So I'm sure the people want to know, is the Wolfie single? Is he in a relationship?
Yeah, I'm single. So like I've been single like 18 months now, and that was quite a journey for me. So it's one of them things where I've been very slow getting back into. I don't believe like the best way to get over somebody is to get under somebody. Anytime like that approach is taken, I just think it's a case of you're not letting a wound heal, and you're gonna bleed all over somebody else, or you'll see it all the time where a breakup happens. And don't get me wrong, if you're like this, like everybody heals differently and each their own. Same thing I always say is like, what I say, what Daniel says is not gospel. It's just what we initially think. Take what adds to your life and leave whatever doesn't. But especially if something triggers you, always ask yourself, why is that triggering? Because usually that's the fucking answer. Because that always happens to me. When somebody says something, I get very defensive. I know, fuck, that's hitting home, which is frustrating because I almost attack it. But yeah, for me, it's been one of them like longer journeys, and it's been a case of just really spending time getting used to being alone, because I was in a relationship for like 6 years, constantly working, constantly around family, and I actually enjoy that because it allowed me to focus a lot on stuff that like I was sweeping under the carpet, like bad routines, bad habits, but not just a case of like sleeping in. Talking about like negative thinking, or do you know, if you're speaking ill of somebody about saying it, or gossip, or if you were, now don't get me wrong, I wasn't doing all these things, I'm just thinking of negative traits, or even just your energy when you show up for another individual, like all these wee things that you can become better at. It's allowed me to do a lot of work that I wouldn't have done on myself, so I'm grateful for it. But in case of like me actually on lockdown while we're going, like I took a full year off women, like most people would not do that. It was
so I wanted to dive a wee bit more into that, because most people would, again, they get straight back on the dating scene, straight on the dating apps, and they're looking for the next one. But you didn't take that route. And like not that we got close back then, because we didn't really know each other. That was that was December
18 months ago.
Yeah, about 18 months ago. So I knew of you. Obviously, I joined Tony's mentorship, and it was one of the live events. I'm pretty sure it was in and around that time. It was after the December event, right? Yeah. So like obviously, we weren't that close back then, but I've seen from then to where you are now a complete character transformation, and it's a breathing a breath of fresh air to see. And I'm sure I'm not the only one to see that too. You've probably seen that on social media. You come across more confident, more sure of yourself. But why did you take that route? Why did you decide, I'm going to take a year out and do me?
It's interesting because like I think a lot of people, do you know what's a very strange thing? My sister and my mum talked about this quite in depth with me, and that you've seen it as well. Most people when they go single tend to start caring more about other people's perceptions. I actually lost all my fucks. I don't know what happened. I feel like the only person that I was probably trying to impress was maybe my old partner, or whatever pressure I felt, or that was from myself though. It wasn't from them in any case. I felt the need for it. So it was a case of like, I went to therapy, I done journaling, I done anything you could possibly do to try and get any inch. And the thing is, it was a case of where the reason I took the time period away is because I was like, oh, I'm not ready for this. I was like, I'm not ready. I didn't really feel ready to be single. I didn't really feel ready to be in another relationship. And it's just me being straight. Like I felt like there was a lot, like, and it was moving on to another partner. I also was like, well, I want somebody with all these traits and characteristics and has this together and that, and this and that. And I was like, well, what am I bringing to the table here? Where are my flaws? No, not everybody's perfect, but I was like, I need to iron these out. And for me, like, it's not from the lack of attention, like, because obviously, like, just being blunt, like, with, like, 600 plus on Instagram now.
600 plus what?
Yeah. No, women. And there's fucking 700K on Facebook. Like, it's not like I'm not going to get some form of attention from somebody.
No, of course. I know.
So it's the case of, like, it is a case of, like, turning it down is quite difficult when you're in that situation, especially as a younger man. But it didn't feel right to me. And anytime I've had a one night stand, I've always felt like shitter after. I've never felt great. It it's always made my self-worth feel off. I've always turned around and been like, what the fuck was I doing? It's never added to my life in the long run, which is quite interesting because most men will get their ego boosted from it, whereas I think that's a short-term ego boost. And it's a self-gratification through, oh, she's a good-looking lass, I was able to bring her home. And if you have to brag about your sexual encounters to other men, in my opinion, that is not good because you're trying to get boosted by...
Right, sourcing that validation to the world.
Yeah, which is quite embarrassing. That's like me saying, you know, like, I bench 100 kilos for reps. It's like, good for you, bro.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah, it's an interest. It's a very interesting because I haven't fully dissected myself. Like, I don't know whether that's the right move or not, but it's one of the things for me. Just it's not a case of like people be like, oh, you move. I've completely moved on from it. But
have you?
Yeah, I have, because like for me, that when a relationship ends and it's dead in the water, because that person who I was is dead. That relationship is dead. That person I was with, in my opinion, is no longer there. They've changed as well. So that love, that relationship, that's all gone. So like you can wish it all back or you can move on. That's not possible again. So you hoping, and that's all.
The idea of somebody that just no longer exists.
That's where most people fall down. Whenever they have a breakup, they romanticize all the good and they forget all the bad. But the thing is as well, you also remember that like who I am, as you said, compared to a year ago is completely different. Just as people listening to this right now, if I asked you, how did you act, feel, talk, think 3 years ago versus now, I would like to think you're a more developed individual. You've been through hard times, good times, and it shapes who you are and you move forward. And then you're grateful for that, because I wouldn't have the transformation I've had in myself without that. And I think that also, for me, brings a real lot of light to other people, because if you've been around me, you'll actually have seen, like, don't get me wrong, I still have a really good business, really good physique, really good shape, but as an energy around people, you're like, oh, I actually want him around me now. Whereas before, I was a little bit more...
So I would say, well, from the outside in, you seemed a lot more reserved, and
I was more covered. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you were, but that's that. So that's the full cake now. Like who you are. Tony loves Bake Off. That's the full cake. So we use that analogy. I'm yet to watch it, but anyways, Tony's a full cake, right? That's the output. What are the inputs? Because I'm sure there's a lot of young lads and maybe young girls too that have maybe just came out of a breakup and they don't really know which way to turn. And I always say, like, it's either make or break. You either turn to drinking, drugs, and outsourcing your validation to the world, or you put it into you. So what did you actually do to get to where you are now? And I mean, from in the past 18 months, like, what did you start doing and what did you stop doing? Because there's maybe a lot of lads or ladies actually looking for answers and looking for pointers.
Yeah, I think the first things first is definitely, if you go through a breakup, is you need to just call it quits. I think a lot of people keep it like the long finger, and they treat it like, people don't realize, like, losing like it's whenever a partner breaks up, it's like grief. You're going to go through the stages of denial, acceptance, bargaining in your head. Joe, if I had done going back through old scenarios and then even turn around and going, but if I do this, this person might come back. Joe, if I get in shape, this person might come back. If I make more money, like all that, you need to realize, you're also going to bounce through the 6 stages of grief, like Joe, acceptance, denial, bargaining. And you're going to bounce back and forth between them at time periods. And it's just sort of accepting that and accepting your emotions and not trying to, like, hide them and man up, but, like, not a case of succumbing to them and sitting in your bed sheets crying. It's hard to feel down for a day or two, male or female, but what's not okay is 6 months down the line and you've not actually done anything. So for me, as we said the other day, you can't always think your way out of them problems. So for me, I go to the gym, I get in the flow, I focus on building myself back up, because for me, it very much felt like, because it was a very mutual breakup, but it was one of the things where a lot of my confidence was probably from that individual. A lot of it was built up. And then
why?
It just a lot of my self-worth. I think because from where I was initially before the relationship to the end of it, I would associate a lot of that with that person coming into my life around that time period, because I stopped doing drugs, I stopped doing drink. So then you associate the success of everything with that individual. Like, for example, I didn't have a business before that. I wasn't really in good shape. Joe, there's so many factors. And then whenever your self-worth is wrapped up in another individual, it takes time to build it up. So it felt like I had built this massive wall of, like, I'm the fucking king. I have 100k followers, good-looking girlfriend. And then I was like, fuck, my walls came tumbling down. I was like, I'm bringing this fucker back from one brick at a time. And that's really the way you should take it. And I remember saying this on Caroline's podcast. I was like, it felt like I wasn't even laying one brick. It felt like I was laying a pebble a day. It felt so slow and it felt so shit. And I remember like for 5, 6, 7 days, like a week or two, I was just feeling sorry for myself there. And then just laid pebbles. I was like, right, Joe, I never missed gym session, never do that. But I was like, where do I feel off? And I was like, not feeling confident. And I was like, Joe, how do I fill these gaps? So like I even started things where I wrote out like things that I feel like I'm not confident that would add to me. So I remember like, right, I'd been like, and people were like, what is this? But a case of like, I was like, if I got in a physical alteration, I was like, I wouldn't be really confident then. I was like, I think if I was able to handle myself, I'd walk my chin held higher. So I was like, I'm going to go to MMA. And I was like, this is completely out of my fucking realm. And I remember rocking down and like being straightforward, like majority of my hometown know me.
Yeah.
It's a very small town. So like when I walk in an MMA gym, like everybody's eyes are on me. And it's like, I'm trying to throw punches like your mum slapping her handbag against me. So, and I went to that for 6 months. And then once I got confident enough to spar, like Daki, which is like a pro MMA fighter, like not fully, like we're talking very light jobs, like, but a case of where I was like, if something happens, I'm confident now. I noticed like as that built, other things built as well. I built up my discipline, built up habits, routines, gratitude, built up my confidence talking to women again, just starting with small conversations. And then I noticed slowly, brick by brick, you build yourself back, but you just have to figure out like, where am I weak? And then little action steps to get there, rather than like, I suck at talking to women. I was like, well, I haven't talked to like a single woman at all. And like, I talk to them, but I was like, not as a single man. So I was like, I'm just going to start by having conversations in coffee shops. And just even having a little bit of crack with whoever served me the coffee. Like, it doesn't even matter if she's older or younger. Same with like, if a woman's older and you're in a pub or in a restaurant and these are like near each other at the bar, have conversation. And people are like, oh, that's not, but that's reps.
Reps, absolutely.
Yeah, it is. Like, if you can flirt with, this sounds like a 50-year-old woman at the front of a bar, like, and she laughs, you don't realize it, but it adds to your confidence of like, oh, I can hold a conversation. And then you can use, I'm not saying use that line, but a case of you can then go in another conversation with some of your own age.
Use that energy.
Exactly, with less pressure. And for me, it was just build yourself back up brick by brick and pebble by pebble and realize that it is a really slow process. But the beauty is now I'm like, if it happened again, I know exactly how you go about it. You build yourself back up. But it's one of the things like I wouldn't be where I am without it. And if I had the choice to go back and have a relationship but not change, I wouldn't take it, because the difference in how I feel, it feels like
it was the catalyst.
Yeah, the catalyst for change. And like 6 months ago, like I said to you, whenever I was actually in Mexico, I remember like just getting like people will know this, if you go in there to funks, you ever feel low or off, you go up and down. I'm sure most people have. It felt like click and my eyes opened again for the first time in years. It felt like I was in a bit of a blitz for like years with work and days rolled into weeks and months, and it clicked for me and I was like, oh fuck, and then my energy came back and I just changed mood. And that's whenever like, not that all my fucks went, but like I was really myself. And then that's whenever like I noticed like Instagram started fucking going metal, my businesses start going metal. I noticed I got more feed. Like the funniest thing is like me coming on Instagram with sriracha on my face, and like I was getting women sliding in my DMs that like wouldn't have looked at me 3 years ago, which is hilarious, because like I would have like some like absolutely like fucking metal, and I'd be like, nah. I'd be like, I don't really care, because like I'm just rolling with these videos.
Yeah,
which is very interesting, because the more you
seem agnostic to it. You know, there's sometimes, I mean, they're more so focused, and I've seen like you've been so laser focused in the past 6 months to a year, then you have been completely agnostic to it. And especially anybody that would get attention might entertain that sometimes, but and you haven't really. And I know that people mess you here and there, but you haven't entertained that at all. Here, when you've been on Mexico, I mean, doing plenty of riding, Tony, with that big gaff in Mexico.
No.
So are you open to that now going forward?
Yeah, but it's like you want the quality women. Like for example, like I had a woman, like I haven't even told you this, but like I had somebody slide in my DMs from here.
Mexico?
Yeah, like straight away. And
this is hot off the press.
This is hot off the press. This is the first time he's seen it. So slid straight in, and I was like, fuck, she's a very good looking woman. And I was like, that's sweet. And I was like, right, bit of back and forth. And then I had somebody else slide in. And I was like, fuck, Joe, I'm only here fucking day. So they're obviously seeing me on Tinder or Hinge or whatever the fuck. And then adding my Instagram, Joe, and messed me on it, because I wasn't obviously fucking doing it.
Is the Instagram in the profile?
No, the Instagram wasn't.
Oh, is it not?
So they've obviously clicked 2 and 2, which is fucking weird. And like the second one that messaged me, I was like, holy fuck, you're even more mad. But then she clicked on their page and I was like, you do OnlyFans. And I was like, that's not the sort of woman I want. And then immediately I was like, meh.
Would you ever go with an OnlyFans woman?
It's not really my vibe, I'm going to be honest. Like, I don't think the problem is the women who do it. I think it's the men who pay for it, because if the men didn't pay, there wouldn't be that.
Absolutely. Why do you think men pay for it?
Because I think that it's an easy option. It's like you're lying in bed at night, you don't have to do the hard labour. Like, it's just easy. So that's why. So like,
it's the effort without the reward. Or sorry, the reward without the effort.
More so. Men do it, yeah.
I think men do. I think it's never been easier to be rejected. Back in the day, you would have had to go up to a woman in a bar or a cafe and approach them and feel the pain of rejection. Whereas now, you swipe right or swipe left and you don't have to feel the same pain that you used to beforehand. So then, again, you can find your woman, you can swipe right and be swiped right on Tinder. So and you can match with somebody there and talk to them there. So, I mean, if you could do it so easily online, why would you do it in person? Why would you do it in person? And again, I don't personally believe that. I actually think that's completely wrong, because of course you're putting reps in online. What happens when you go into the real world? And, you know, I know a lot of like jacked individuals making great money, and when a woman comes up to them, they shit the bed. And like, these are like 25-year-old guys, stallions. And I think that's sad. I think, as you said, it's a rep scheme. And like, I spoke about this in the podcast beforehand. When I worked in Topshop, there was a lot of attractive girls that I would have worked with, and it really, like, again, that was just consistent reps day in, day out. And I've realized that men just don't put the reps in anymore, because it's never been easier to be rejected, and you need to go up. And again, I know there's a dating coach that goes out there if you want to improve your confidence with women. I think we spoke about this in Bali, that you have to go up and get 30 rejections in a day. It's either 30 rejections in a day or a week.
You get, no, it's I think it starts up per week and he builds you up to like,
so you become numb to it. You can become completely...
30 women, like, I think you would get one that accepts you.
No, you absolutely...
Well, you get rejections.
You definitely would.
Do you feel like the reason that they dodge the rejection is because their self-confidence is so fragile?
Of course. They, again, outsource that validation to the world, and...
Ask yourself that question, maybe.
Huh?
Ask yourself that question. If you're like, can I handle rejection? If I walked up to just a random, beautiful looking woman right now, just turn me down, how much does it knock me? Because if it knocks you, that shows how much made of glass you really are.
How much depth there is to...
How much validation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, like, I suppose it's the same with a lot of things. Like, if you took away your Instagram following tomorrow...
What have you got? None.
No, again, legit though, if you take away your Instagram or every single follower you had tomorrow, I think it's normal to say it would knock you. It would knock anybody. Absolutely. It becomes part of your identity, right?
Seems like there's no muscle, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But what would you have? What would you take pride in aside from that?
Would you have the traits?
Yeah, exactly. So what would you take pride in if you lost all that tomorrow? What are the
working individual? If my account went, the first thing I'd think is I can get that back.
Exactly.
It's the same as like it's who you build in the disciplines. Like the reason abs are attractive or Instagram following's attractive, or much as people don't want to admit that it's a status game. It's a cost. It's a benefit of hard work. You don't normally get it without hard work.
So people win the lottery, and again, why do they find themselves broke within 18 months to 2 years?
Yeah,
because again, they don't have the characteristics that got them there. And on the topic of approaching women and talking to women, we were chatting the other day about, do you have to be a dick to pull women? Do you have to be the bad guy to be able to attract and to keep women? What's the saying? It's treat them mean, keep them keen. What's your take on that? Do you think you have to be a dick to pull women?
I think there's a balance. I don't think you have to be. I think there's a balance between, like, I would be quite cheeky, but there's a difference between being cheeky and like being a dick. I do think that if you come across as the problem is I think a lot of people get confused with what is nice, dick, and needy. And I think that's where men come across. They don't realize it, but the woman takes nice as needy sometimes. So I think that's where the misconception comes in, because you're being nice, but you're sending signals of neediness because you're maybe replying too fast. You're maybe prioritizing her too much. And that's not being a dick, not doing that. It's just a case of like, you need to be self-sufficient. versus a lot of men aren't. And then I think that comes across that they're looking for happiness, they're looking for fulfillment through her, and they're being nice about it, but that comes across as needy, whereas me being nice would be me replying to you once every 2 to 3 days.
Yeah, I always would have been, for me, like Tia and I spoke about this. I put up a reel about it, and I said personally, I don't think you should be a dick to women. I was a dick back in the day when I was 17, 18. You know, I would have lied, let on, and treated people like shit, and you know that came back to bite me in the ass down the line. And now, as I reflect and look back on that, I realised that was child's play. And did that maybe attract women at the time? Potentially. But that's never going to, one, attract the right person, and two, it's never going to sustain. It's never going to transition. It's never going to transpire into a happy long-term relationship, in my opinion.
I've had women where, whenever I was younger, like 6-7 years ago, where just before I went in a long-term relationship, and I would have treated them like a dick for like 6 months, like just dick. And then I would have started getting a little bit of feelings towards them because time moves on, you know, sex is happening, you become more emotionally tangled. And then I noticed when I eased off in the dick front, they start to disengage from you.
Absolutely.
Because they're emotionally attached to that dickhead, and it's not a case of who you're pretending to be, it's a case of there's some reason that they're finding that attractive and they haven't dealt with that, and the problem is you're going to struggle to have a meaningful long-term relationship. Because I remember sort of not flicking mode, but almost being like, fuck, I'm going to go long-term with this female. And then as I eased off, I was like, I can feel her backing out.
Yeah.
Like I could feel her attraction to me. And then as soon as I flick dick mode back on, straight away all over you. And you're sort of like, it turned me off completely then, because I was like, I don't want this at all then. Because I was like, this is going to be shit. So it's interesting because there's still females like that the whole way up. I don't care what anyone says. And you'll notice they go for dickheads throughout, and they don't actually have a cop on. That's what they're like, oh, I always fall for dickhead. Like, that is on you 110%, and there's some reason underlying there that you're maybe not addressing. Which
the common denominator. Absolutely.
Exactly.
But again, people want what they can't have. And in my personal opinion now, like again, we spoke like about being cheeky with something. Like that's how I would have been back in the day. Like you had a bit of banter, you like cheeky digs into people. That's like flirting, having the crack.
That's normal.
But again, growing up, maybe you heard of it, maybe you hadn't. But like again, I remember speaking with my mates about this. And some girls will be listening to this, being horrified. Push-pull method, and it's kind of what you spoke about there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like it was a known thing when we were growing up, the push-pull method. So you would have lent in, given someone attention, and then as soon as you've got it, boom, you pull away, and for 24, 48 hours, and you just ghost. And that was, I mean, it's really messing with somebody's emotions, but again, it's reeling them in, and then you're pulling away, and
it's called love bombing too, isn't it?
Love bombing is that?
Gifts and all at the start, and then you fucking, as soon as you get them linked, then you hook out.
Yeah. And
it's interesting because if a woman or a man's listening, this might be the first time you're hearing this, but that's tactics I would have used too. Like,
it's emotional manipulation, but that is how, like, again, how a lot of guys that growing up, like, that was normal, and that is scary.
That is normal.
But I think when you grow up, especially as you develop a lot of self-worth and self-confidence, and you realize that I don't need another woman to be sufficient, that's what women find attractive.
And if a woman finds only the dick attractive, it's an insecurity of self-validation that they want that person to find them attractive and keep them, and their self-worth's going to be tangled up in getting you, or vice versa, you getting them. And I think it's interesting because, like, I don't think you have to be a dick to pull women, but I think there's that fine line of, like, I think, for example, like with the way you talk about your relationship too, like one of the reasons, like, Tia will obviously find you attractive about being a dick is you're not being a dick, but you have set boundaries. And
I'm very firm.
Yeah, and that's not being a dick. But that's an attractive trait because it's still like an authority stat. It's still a man stat, because most females will want the man to have more masculine energy. So being firm on yourself, your standards, it's not being a dick, but technically some people from the outset would be like, well, he's not coming to see me on a weekend because he's working or something. But that's like a very, as much as that's annoying, and people will be like, that's him being a dick, that's a stern, attractive, firm to certain individuals. It's not all females, but and then I think that in itself can be seen as like being a dick, and then, you know, where you actually lie and where your values, morals are. And I think as you age too, like, I like to think of it like that most people tend to grow out of the phase and don't want that, but there's some people that don't have the emotional maturity of that and don't realize that their subconscious is driving their attraction. Because usually you're attracted to something, like, for example, like the reason most men like big tits. It's because, Joe, obviously when you're younger, Joe, breast, the reason you want big hips is because they're good for childbirth. That's usually the trend. Do you know what I mean? Long hair on a female is seen as more attractive than short because that's shown as a sign of good fertility.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, like, subconsciously, if I goes to you, would you rather your female partner have short or long hair? Just straight off the bat, most men will go long. Even though some females are unreal with short hair and it's very attractive, it's more of a serious cut and it's more of it's just programmed into us. And it's interesting because you don't realize then subconsciously there are physical traits, but there's actual traits of an individual that you'll find attractive because maybe your parents showed them traits. It's like, for example, you'll see if I've noticed this with like friends and people I'd be close to that, like, for example, like if they're a female and their mum wears the pants in the relationship, they assume that that's the way it should be. So they'll bring that prowess in to the relationship. And it's interesting because then they try and bring that dynamic in with a different man. It's all these different things. And you need to remember, a lot of your sense of what a relationship should be is probably based off your mum and dad, which technically can be, it's just them figuring out their shit.
It's a good thing or a bad thing for some individuals.
Yeah, so like your sense of what a good relationship is can be like, oh, but my mum and dad have a long-lasting marriage. But that was a different lifetime ago. That was also like, do they have the sex you want to have at that age? Do they have the lifestyle you want to have? Is there certain things they've done you won't get? And they all screw up for a different time, different morals, different values. But I think a lot of our perception initially of what a good relationship is biased off that without even realizing.
Yeah, no, I know. I'd be the same. Like, I would base that exactly the same way off my mum and dad's. Like, they've been married maybe 31 years, and like my dad would come home and, you know, he would say, like, he would still give my mum a kiss, he would call her beautiful, he would still go on date nights, and like in my head that bar is set there. Then like in my head I'm like, after 30 years I still want to be there.
A lot of parents, I can guarantee you, like, listen to that would be like, fuck, like my parents up going on date night next time, or my dad, when's the last time I've heard my dad compliment my mum? And if it's one of the things where it's as simple as, like, for example, like, I do notice things that my dad does. He does a lot of small things, and I'm like, that shows caring, because obviously there's love languages and all that, but it's like, there are the small things. I'm like, that's where for me, that's where, like, I'm like, that's how it is. It's built on the small things. It's not the big gestures and the big holidays. It's like, how often is he cooking you dinner? How often is he running you a bath when you don't ask? Or how often is he, Joe, making your life that little bit easier? Joe, like, is he doing the shopping for you? Is he doing cleaning? Like, when you go, does he do the iron? Stuff that he definitely doesn't want to fucking do, but he's just doing because he's like, I'm trying to make her. And then for me, it's like, right, that builds the relationship, Joe, layer by layer. It's not about who's doing what. Once it turns into tit for tat, that's a mess.
Yeah, so go ahead.
It's just interesting because, like, I've never thought about it like that to an extent.
I mean, for me, I always had this idea of, like, being in love with someone, like, it has to be absolutely perfect and everything's romantic. And I mean, for now I've realized that, you know, that's not what that actually is. It's, you know, you try and make it as romantic as possible, but there's your partners, no, they're not perfect, but it's seeing that individual as someone that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, and compromising on each other's imperfections, and not compromising, but seeing beauty in each other's imperfections. I know that sounds really cliche, but, you know, there's certain things which I do, which, you know, to the outside in, people might think, oh my God, like, get in the bin, whereas it's the same vice versa with TNL. You know?
That does make sense. So for me, it's like the acceptance of the imperfections, and the acceptance of, like, where we talked about this, like, the things that are, like, annoy you eventually, like, you learn to deal with, or you learn to cope with. And I do rate the word compromise. Like, I know a lot of people hate that word, like, relationships are compromise, but technically you're fitting you're fitting two pieces of a jigsaw together that probably don't really fit, and you're going, we're going to fucking work at this and try and sharpen our edges. It's like, it sounds ridiculous, but it's like, Joe, like, your jigsaw pieces are fucking all over the shop, and you're ironing out each other, being like, right, well, this doesn't really fit, but, like, we'll wire it in here, and Joe, I don't really like that about your side there, so let's try this, and let's come. And I like that, because for me, it's like, once you start looking for perfection in yourself, in others, you're looking for the most romantic relationship, because your relationship, this may be straight, it might not be the most romantic, it might not be the most, like, clean cut, and you might not get to see each other as much as you, but then the sex can be really good, the conversation can be really good, and the things that matter to both of you is good. So then what does it matter if the other things aren't? Like, maybe you don't do all these little things, but then maybe the main building blocks are there anyway, or vice versa. Maybe you're struggling in one area like sex, but everything else is good. And then people are like, well, I'm going to throw it in. I'm like, that's one area, and everything can be worked on. The problem is, in my opinion, I think, and it's me being blunt, I do feel like, as you said, that's the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with. I said this to you the other day, because we were talking about this relationship thing, and I was like, for me, it's picking a family member, because I'm like, see, whenever you go into a relationship, two things are going to happen. You're going to break up or you're going to marry the person. And in my thought process, I go, I'm going into the grave with this fucker. And that's me being straight, because you're going to the grave with them. Yeah, that's it. You're sharing a 6 by 4.
Big one for you, bro.
Oh, well, not be 6 by 4, it'll be 5 by 5. We'll go thicker and wider. Shorter and thicker. Unless she's really tall. Yeah. You never know. I could get lucky. I had the children end up taller than me. Right, they're going off topic. But a case of that thought process for me is probably one of the reasons that people be like, oh, that's a bit serious, a bit heavy. But I'm like, I have such good people are like, oh, but a relationship will be fun. I'm like, I have great fun by myself. I have great fun on dates and all, but it's like, if I'm going to get in a long-term relationship, you want it to be the right, you want to spend time with, and obviously, but it's the work at it that I think is the funnest part, because it's like, do you always want to go on a date night? Like, I remember doing a date night in my life, and like breaking out, like being like, right, what date? I'm being like, what are we going to do? And I was like, oh, I got Connect 4, and I was like, what the fuck? And I was like, I just can't force fun.
Yeah.
Dorky, but I was like,
that's so dorky, but it's good.
I was like, it's just right. But I was like, whereas people think dinner, cocktails, and I was like,
nah.
I was like, and I was like, even if it's only for 40, 50 minutes, I was like, it's something different.
Yeah,
and I was
jokes.
Like, yeah.
But it's working on its key, and I think that's across the board, working on the relationship, working on you as an individual. And if you aspire to have a woman with certain traits, make sure that you have them yourself.
Yeah,
that's the key. And if you're in a position where you haven't got them yet, then that's okay. Maybe take that period of solace at the moment and double down on you, like Wolfie's done. And it's actually been class to see to see you flourish and go from where you were to where you are now. And maybe you're in the position to find Mrs. Wolf now, who knows. But I think the best thing is that you're happy on your own regardless, and it's someone that would have to add to your life massively, and that's class.
I really appreciate that, because that's what me and I talk about it with my sister, because I'm like, not do I need a partner, because I think I'd be lying if you said I didn't feel like, I sometimes feel like, oh, would this person, this would be better with somebody else, or but I think once you start thinking like that too often, then you fry your own head, and you have to ask yourself and go, as you said, does this person add to my life? And I'm like, I add quite a lot by myself now, with my energy, with my mood. I'm like, you need to be coming in and adding layers. Once you add layers, it'll be hard to remove you. But it's like, if you're coming in, you're gonna start taking away from it. Fuck this, I'm out. Like, yeah. So I'm like, but once you work on yourself to that level, you can ask that standard. Like, the first thing I said was like, I remember like loads of beautiful women, and I'd talk to them for a couple minutes with DMs, and I'd voice note them, and I'd even, like, this sounds off, I'll just ping the FaceTime button and have a 5-minute conversation with them. I'll maybe ping them one more time, and I'd be like,
triage call.
I'd be like, God. Or I'd be like, yeah, that person's funny or good crap. But like, I know within 5 minutes, that's all you need. You just need to know. Now, fair enough, to me, that's judge a book by its cover, but it's not even. But a case of, it's like,
you have to be selective about who you're going to spend the rest of your time with, rest of your life with. That's okay to be picky about, mate.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the things where I'm also like, you can tell straight away, has a person been working on themselves? Or, we're not saying she's be in shape and she's be super, but I'm like, is anything going on like to improve yourself? Because if she's not willing to improve herself by herself, single, you see in a relationship with you, she doing fuck all.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck what you say.
Yeah, because if she relax.
Yeah, if she's 20, 27, peak of her life, single, looking for Mr. Right, and she's not working on more than just like looking the part for Instagram, you can sock it, love, because when we're 40, you're gonna be a melter.
Battered. You were. I was wondering what was coming out there.
I didn't know what. I was like, hey.
No, I appreciate that. But no, we're gonna wrap it up. I enjoy it. What time is it now? It's 8:30. It's just bedtime for Wolfie and I.
Oh,
no, we'll maybe do one or two more before we finish. But no, we just wanted to come on and shoot the shit. And bro, I appreciate the insights. Big love, you're the man.
There's love.
And yeah. I was going to say, where can we find you? But I'm pretty sure you know where to find the wolf. Like, Tony Mcaleavey, IG, 1 million inbound. If you like the pod, please like, share, subscribe. you know the drill. Big love, and I will catch you in the next one. Thank you, Wolf. Big love.